Namaste. Welcome to this Ask Me Anything, Ask Helen Anything, Volume 20. And just before we get into the actual questions, just to let you know, the next one of these will be recorded in the middle of November. We are away on retreat beginning of next month in the beautiful Glastonbury. So the next one will be sort of the middle of November before it gets recorded and uploaded. So if you listen to this and have something that you want to send in, just leave it as a comment underneath this video here on YouTube, and we'll go through these and I'll address them when we do the next one. So it can be anything that you need help with. It can just be something you've broken through and you want to share. I'd love to hear that too. It could also be a challenge that you're having or seeing that you've had, anything like that. So anything at all to do with awakening, as the title suggests. So that being said, Karen is here to help me read today. Thank you, Karen, whenever you're ready.
Okay. So our first comment is a thank you from user 2 up month. And she says, thank you so much, Helen, for your help.
Thank you.
So this is from Disweb. I love your teaching, so clear and simple. Contemplation seems like such a wonderful non-doing way of letting go of core beliefs. Some clarity on the following would be very helpful. I believe I experience beingness when I focus on the silence and the spaciousness. However, I also still feel like the body's mind is quite real. My experience is that I am both. When you ask, can you find the separate being? Why do you say that, yes, you can find the body and thoughts and sensations? However, there are not a separate self. My experience is that the body and the thoughts and the sensations and the emotions are proof of the separate self. Since all spiritual teachings points to the body being an illusion, how do I get past it feeling so real?
Okay, so if you look at the sense of I, I'll start first with this bit about finding what is the separate being, and then I'll go on to the last bit. There is a body, there's thoughts, all of that. But does that make up a separate being? Not really, because if your separate being is made up of things that are coming and going and changing, it's not going to be very stable. So our thoughts, our emotions, our experience, and even our body is constantly in change. So it can't really be what you are. You are shedding skin cells as you're listening to this, your hair's growing, everything about your body is changing. Your thoughts are constantly in flux. Sometimes they're completely absent. So if that was what you were, you would also be absent in deep sleep or deep meditation, those are under anesthesia as well. So if you are only this temporary physical form, and that is the separateness, then it basically implies that when the body's gone, there is nothing else at all. But if you look a little closer, there's a sense of I, an I-ness, a me-ness, something that says my body, my thoughts, something that inherently knows that a version of you, somehow, something that inherently knows that the body belongs to you, that the body is used by you, that it's not, I am not my mind, it is my mind, as in it's something that I am using, like my body, my emotions, my experience, my relationships, my car. As you say, my car, you know you're not your car. It's something that you use. It's a vehicle just like the body is. So there is something that says me or I or my or mine. And that's really what we're inquiring into when we look for this separate being. What is it that says I? And for most of us, when we say my mind, the me that's talking there, we have a sense that it's a distinct, separate entity that's using the body, and that all these other bodies are used by different separate entities, so that the world is populated by billions of separate beings. That's the idea, that I am a something living inside a body that is separate to all the other someones and somethings. And then when we inquire into that, we actually find that we can't find this I, this me, as a thing, as a separate being. It really only is an isness, a sense, and it's not a concrete thing that you can put your finger on. And if we look even closer, we'll find that this I, this me, isn't actually a thing at all. It is no thingness, as you've pointed to in what you've written. It is awareness, it is consciousness, presence, the real self. So just to be clear that who I really am cannot be made up of anything that is coming and going. Otherwise, I would always be changing. I would always be different. If I was only the content of my thoughts and my emotions and my body and my dreams, desires, you'd never be the same, would you, from one minute to the next? And of course, there's nothing wrong with that. We just can't base anything stable on that. Even if you were your body and your thoughts and emotions, when they're gone, you would be gone. And you would have to have arisen out of something. All forms have to have arisen out of something. There must be something even prior to form. Even if that's what we were, form, body, then there'd have to be something prior to that for it to arise out of. Something that isn't arising, from which all forms emerge. So just looking at what it is that says me and mine. Next time you say, I'm going to go get in my car, my shopping list, my thoughts, my emotions, my body. What is it that's saying that? And we skip over that part so quickly and we identify and we're fascinated with the forms, the thoughts, the bodies, the emotions, the experiences. And we have this kind of tendency to overlook that which is before the form and actually our inherent real nature. So to answer the second part, basically the body is an illusion in terms of it isn't only a body that stands. It's not an independent object on its own. Can't survive by itself. So it is a shape made, a form. All forms are shapes made out of this shapeless, infinite consciousness, awareness, presence. The same thing that says me and mine when it talks through a body likes to make the shape of the body as if you were walking down the street one day, the infinite consciousness, and this would be much more fun in a vehicle. So you create this body for yourself to move around in and explore in and play in. Of course, in the world of thoughts, and it tends to identify with the body and gets a little confused for a long time, but it's coming back to clarity in the world of thoughts, at least. So there is and there isn't a body. It's an illusion, the body, in that it cannot exist on its own, just as no form can. Without this formless substrate of consciousness, awareness, presence, I'm using all those words as synonyms, from which it arises. So if you can imagine if you had a room full of invisible gas, like air here in this room, if you compressed the air in this room enough, put enough pressure on it, squashed it right down, eventually it would begin to become visible and solid. It'd be liquid, and then you put even more pressure on it, it would finally become solid. It's kind of like what's happened with the invisible, intangible consciousness, suddenly seemingly becoming, no analogy is perfect, but seemingly becoming visible and tangible. So the body is and isn't unreal at the same time. It's unreal in that it can exist on its own. And we know that even from our everyday experience, it needs food, it needs sleep, it needs water. But it's real because it is a shape in the infinite consciousness, not different to or separate from the consciousness. And a lot of things in awakening are of this paradoxical nature. Do I have a body or not? Is there a body or not? Yes, it's a shape that's been formed inside your real self, and you're doing that with plants and planets and thoughts and emotions and animals and amoeba and the whole universe is the shape that you're making out of yourself. And no, there aren't any independent forms existing separately. Form and formless then eventually are seen to be just two different ways that you can appear. You can appear as a form or formlessness. And you're so awesome that you can do both of those. The only mistake we tend to make as a human being is that we can imagine somehow that the form can exist without something that it arose out of, and that the form arising is actually a real event where it's separated off from its creator. And that's where we begin to get stuck in our thoughts. So I hope that helps, but please do ask again if you need more clarity on that. Thanks, Karen.
So the next comment is from Susan. Thank you so much. The questions and answers were so helpful. Your way of explaining is so simple and direct. Wonderful.
Thank you.
And this is from Shinny. Hello, Helen. I wanted to ask your thoughts on my spiritual practice. The practice of resting as awareness, defocusing attention and directing it inward towards my being. Is this enough on its own for full liberation, or are practices like self-inquiry and contemplation usually essential as well? Personally, I've been resting as awareness for many years now. To be honest, I've become quite adept at resting there for extended periods of time, in formal sitting and during daily activities. I sometimes get glimpses of peace and bliss while doing this. However, no permanent shift has happened that would end my suffering for good and allow me to feel contentment steadily. I've been diligently practicing methods like self-inquiry, such as what am I, where am I, and contemplating the nature of consciousness for a long time now. But I have to admit, I don't feel like these practices are really working or doing anything transformative. At the end of the day, I still tend to feel anxious and experience emotional suffering like I did for most part of my life. Do you have any advice? I would greatly appreciate any guidance you can offer, as I feel a bit stuck and discouraged. Any advice how to continue?
Yeah, I just want to start by saying I remember being right there, and it was very discouraging. Perhaps the worst place to be, because you're you're seen enough to know that you're not the separate self, and can't seem to progress any further, and you're almost kind of stuck in this limbo. And like you, I was very good at resting in the stillness or being aware of awareness, listening to silence. I could do that all day long while I was out driving, wherever I was. But I didn't realize that actually, on some subtle level, that was fortifying my sense of being a separate being. I'm so good at tuning in, and I'm not saying you're saying this, but this is what was going on inside, this kind of, for me, building up the identity again as a someone who could really, but yet subtly keep myself separate to the silence, by being the person that could tune into it. I can access it anywhere. And it was only these moments of most times peace, but then these awful moments, days, weeks, sometimes, where there was just this absolute suffering. And it was showing me that there was something still remaining to be seen. And this is where self-inquiry really helped. So self-inquiry and meditation became very much a clearer seeing of who I really am. And when I believe myself to be a separate being, that separate beingness is fortified by the karmic patterns that it has. Those are like the branches. The idea I'm a separate being is like the tree trunk and the roots, and it has all these branches of my thoughts about myself as a someone, a separate being. So in my own awakening, I found that contemplation, working with the emotions, was also quite vital, because and it became, that's why all three of these are in the core teachings that I'm always trying to point people to: meditation, self-inquiry, and also contemplation, because we might have seen that we're not a separate being, done inquiry, etc., had some profound peace and some deep seeings. But if I sit here on a meditation seat and I'm inquiring and meditating and feeling a lot of peace, and then the moment I go out to work or pick up the kids from school, in the supermarket, in the airport, wherever, Christmas dinner, there's always this capacity to be triggered with these beliefs that we have inside. So fear, shame, anger, guilt, all the negative emotions that we feel, frustration, despair, um, discouragement, as you said as well, they're pointed to some branch on this tree of separation that really needs some looking at. For me, uh, the suffering didn't end completely until I'd really uprooted these, and I didn't intend that pun, but there you go. So if you look at the major emotions that you're feeling and question what the belief is behind them. So mind will say things like you're scared because you don't have enough money, or can't find the right person, you can't find the right job. Really, we're just scared because we think we're separate beings. Guilt or shame is a unworthiness, a belief on a story underneath that I'm really not good enough. There's something inherently wrong with me, some fundamental flaw, which is again part and parcel of believing we're a separate being. So we can see that we're not separate in our inquiry, but then we automatically, as human beings, go back to our old thought process when we go out there in the world and do our thing. And it's so habituated that we think this particular way. For a long time, I didn't even realize this thinking that I was going out and doing was still in separation, me and other, scared of everything because I feel as a separate being, scared of running out this, that, and the other, scared of sickness, old age, not having enough money, on and on and on it went. So for me, contemplation was an essential, and all three of them together, contemplation, self-inquiry, meditation, um, because meditation and self-inquiry are going to show you what you really are. But that's also, if it's like two sides of a coin, what you really are and what you are not are both sides of that coin, like heads and tails. And you can't have a clearer seeing of who you really are without next moment being offered a chance to have a clearer seeing of who you're not. So I see that I'm everywhere, formless, vast, infinite. Then I go out to work and I get really irritated with my boss. And in that moment, I'm feeling very finite and limited, and I'm believing that this person is separate and outside of my being and outside of my control, and might be affected by this being, and I'll feel scared. I'll feel that they have power over me and all of that out of control. So just to look at the major emotions that you're feeling. And for most of us, that's only a few. Usually it's anger, frustration and irritation, impatience are all minor forms of anger, shame or guilt, unworthiness, and fear. So there is, I will put a link in the description to a page on my website with a list of, and these were mine. So obviously I ask you to look at this yourself to find out, ask the emotion what it wants to tell you, not about out there. I'm not scared because I don't have enough money. But just sit with fear when it pops up, or whatever the emotion is, just sitting with it. What does fear want to tell me? When I asked it that, it was the only way when it told me the belief, I'm not safe, I'm in danger. So I had to question that using contemplation, turning that into a question. Is that true, that I'm not safe? Feels very true, and we've experienced it many times. But as the infinite being, is that true? And this is how you turn your thought process around. It's not there's a myth in spirituality, especially in awakening, that you have a big seeing and somehow that immediately rewires your thought process to think like an awakened being. And it really isn't the case. I've never met anyone with whom that happened at all. Most times we have to unpick these old ways of thinking, which become very clear and very opposite to, normally we're feeling a lot of peace, and then this old idea comes up, there's something wrong with me. And you've seen yourself to be that divine, formless, already completeness. This idea hurts so much. So I suggest looking, I'll put the thing in the description. You can look at the different emotions, and I've got some suggestions on there of what came up for me when I looked. But asking yourself, asking the emotion as if it was someone that wanted to tell you something, they had a secret to tell you, and then turning that into a question. And in the core teachings playlist here on YouTube, there are contemplation videos on there how to do that as well. So I suggest watching those, how to work with that kind of question if you haven't already. And for me, the only permanent road out of suffering was these three used together: meditation, self-inquiry, and contemplate. Not at the same time, but used at various times. Meditation and self-inquiry will really speed it up, but then the other side of that coin is speed up seeing what you are, that you have to step away from thoughts about who you are not. And those old ways are just so familiar and habitual, and they really begin to hurt in contrast to where you're hanging out most times. So have a look at that and then watch the contemplation videos. The moment you begin to question, when fear comes up or an emotion, you'll be able to feel the relief of challenging this belief. Because until I ask, is it true I'm not safe? I'm assuming it is. And that's why my body's telling me I'm terrified. Is it true there's something wrong with me? I'm still assuming there is, unless I ask that question. I'm agreeing with that thought pathway and it gets solidified and strengthened. As we question, we're breaking down the old way of thinking and allowing new thought pathways to emerge. How the infinite self would think, like there's never been anything wrong with me. I'm already free. Those kind of thoughts. So probably all that remains for you is just to turn around this way of thinking, as we all have to do. So I hope that helps. But as always, please do write back in if you need more guidance on that. Thanks, Karen.
Hi, Helen. I appreciate your satsang and clarity so much and find them truly very helpful. I seem to find the need to share the message with friends. The other day, someone said, you have to go within, see what your heart says. And I stopped and decided that I wasn't sure how you did that. I know it's got nothing to do with the inside of the body or the organ heart. I was thinking maybe it was simply meditating, dipping into the moment, but would love to hear more. Thank you. And that's from Matt Kovic.
That's a good question. So for me, there was just something deeper than what my mind was telling me. There's always a sense of whether you call it instinct, intuition, guidance, what my real self knows about any particular situation is going to be different to what my mind knows. My real self has the perspective of being infinite and having a much broader picture of what's actually going on. My mind can only think about it from one body mind's perspective of what's going on around and what it thinks might happen, etc. And usually most of that is based on our previous experiences, our thought process. So for me, tuning into what my heart wanted, what my heart said, the guidance of my heart was really just sort of more a way of being rather than something I could do. It was what wants to happen here? What's the highest thing I could do here? There were kind of questions that just opened me up into this deeper space. As you said, diving into this moment. And sometimes trusting that is the right thing because it comes with a feeling in the body. The body will tell you, if we're paying attention, whether the guidance that we're following is from the heart, from our authentic self. And I'm using those two terms synonymously. The heart of our being is who we really are, that we are love. It is all heart in that respect. Or whether the guidance that we're following is from the mind. And you'll feel the difference. And you can test this out. You can if you want to do it right now, you can test it out. You can ask whoever is your sort of favorite avatar awakened being. Let's take the example of Christ or the Buddha. If you just think about them now, try to remember some facts about them. Try to think about what you remember of them, and notice how that feels in your body. Probably feels quite neutral, or I don't know, slightly pleasant, something like that. Maybe it even brings some negative emotion because we're automatically comparing ourselves to that being. And then for a moment, just closing your eyes if you want to, and asking to connect with that being in your heart. Christ or Buddha or whoever. It could be Kuan Yin, Mary Magdalene. It could be Prophet Muhammad. It could be anyone that you feel especially aligned with, and just asking to connect with them in your heart. You don't even need to know what that is, just to, I would like to meet you. And then just kind of quietly listening, feeling for what that's like. And you'll probably notice a profound difference. And your body is one of the beautiful things about your body. It's there to give you that feedback. Am I actually coming from my heart right now or from my mind? And again, there's nothing wrong with mind. We just know where that goes, that kind of cyclic thinking. Sometimes, and of course, we've played with two extreme examples, connecting with Christ or someone, some great being. But what does my heart say about this? You've got a decision to make. You think through the options. You know what that feels like. What does my heart say about this? And it is the same as Christ and the Buddha, your heart. They really are one being. So it always will give you authentic guidance. And quite often that might be counterintuitive, not logical at all, what your heart says about something. As you play with this, with smaller decisions, you'll see something never leads you wrong. It might lead you in a weird way around to get what you want, but it will definitely lead you there, and all the experiences you need to have along the way to allow that to occur. So just feel that out. I still don't know what my heart is, my real heart, and I don't need to in that way. Just it's more of how do I connect with that? How do I make sure I'm coming from that place authentically? And of course, meditation, self-inquiry will show us that that's all we ever are. We're never that separate being. And then naturally, the guidance of our heart is always going to be the first thing that's offered and the first thing that's listened to, with the mind's advice, let's say, being an optional second. Thank you, Karen.
Okay, this is from ideology. I have often been motivated to, I have often not been motivated to get out of bed, escaping into dreams and the pleasure of being half asleep, out of lethargy and deep, intense apathy. There's been struggle to push myself to do work, chores, exercise, or anything really that requires effort or willpower. I've never had a job, and if it wasn't for wealthy parents supporting me, I would have become homeless or be dead by now. I feel deep shame for my apathy-induced lethargy and sedentary tendencies. Even when I feel joy and love welling up inside me, more and more often, these issues remain even if things have improved a lot. In spiritual practice, even supposedly easy practice, like your self-inquiry and EFT tapping, seems to be far too much hassle and effort to bear trying. I regularly observe my emotions and my breathing, like hours a day. It's so easy and love doing so, listening to your satsangs. But now I discover the reason why the dense emotions in my body never seem to run out is because of my beliefs. How do I clear the apathy without the effort the apathy precludes? You mentioned breakthroughs. I keep having spontaneous laughter fits, sometimes random, other times when I think about the wonderful absurdity of life.
Okay, so well done for writing in and sharing and being so brave here. It's not easy to admit things that are challenging. And you said that you feel shame because of this apathetic attitude towards life and not being able to find the energy, the motivation to do that what you want to do and what you need to do, even spiritual practice, some spiritual practice. Excuse me. But I would like to suggest it's the other way around. I'd like to suggest that because you feel shame, there's so much life force cut off from the body and the mind, um, that it's not really allowing you to live in the way that you want to live. It's the other way around. So it's not that I feel shame because I can't kind of get my act together, and I should be able to. Which is what mind will probably say and has been saying. It's because there's a belief hidden behind the shame, then the life force energy can't flow. So shame is indicating that there's a story there that's still being believed. So if you're just looking at that, and you don't need to do any hard work with this, there is just the capacity to look at this. That's all. What does shame say to you? It's hard to find the energy to do the spiritual practice that's going to make you permanently joyful if you don't believe you deserve to be happy. And if you look at shame or any sort of guilt, unworthiness, or shame, it's indicating some kind of belief. For me, when I really asked shame what it wanted to tell me, and I had a lot of it, like everyone, I'm sure. Shame said to me that I don't deserve to exist. Some days it said you don't deserve to be happy. Most times I don't deserve to exist. And when I look at that, that belief was in me, as I'm sure it is for you. I was slowly neglecting my body, or not so slowly. I was drinking a lot of alcohol at the time, and I really wasn't taking care of myself at all. I was very deeply depressed, and of course, then there would be no energy available to actually look after myself and do something loving for myself. Of course, there couldn't be. If I don't feel on some fundamental level that I deserve to even be here, of course, somehow unconsciously, I'm going to be on this apathetic view of myself and even my spiritual practice. And I won't be able to do spiritual practice effectively because that's the one thing that's going to bring infinite peace, joy, continuous laughter, and, well, not continuous, but frequent laughter and joy and all those things that we want. So just turning that around and realizing that that belief is not shame because of the way you are. The way you are is because of the shame and the belief underneath it. It's so important to recognize that, because then you can finally start to move beyond it. There is a satsang, and I'll try to remember to put it in the description as well, that we did a long time ago, and it's called From Self-Hate to Self-Love. So I'll put that in there, and I would really advise you to watch that and check that out, because once you begin to spiral down into shame and apathy, it's sometimes very hard to climb out of there. And especially when you're stuck in this loop of thinking, I'm ashamed because I can't get my act together. This is where I was stuck. And when you begin to realize that it's not that at all. It's because I came into this lifetime with this belief very deeply inside me that I can't have happiness. It's just not going to happen for me. Even if I do, for a moment, experience joy, happiness, it will have to go away again because I don't deserve it. So really look at that shame and see what story it wants to tell you. And then question that. Can that really be true? You've had spontaneous glimpses, you've had moments, you've had joy. You know there is some other version of you. The biggest thing I want you to hear, though, is that you need to flip this on its head. Your mind is saying the shame is because of the way your life is at the moment and the way your energy level is at the moment. And I really want you to hear that's the other way around. You cannot have abundant resources of energy and joy and finances and life force and passion and motivation when you really feel deep down that you don't deserve to be happy or whatever that belief is saying to you. So have a look at that for me and really challenge it. Even though you seem to be living that belief, you have to challenge it because it's not true. I know who you are, and you've had momentary glimpses of who you are. And you are so radiant and beautiful and perfect. and there could never be anything wrong with you. The only thing that's happening here now is that your awakening is deepening enough that these thoughts can no longer stay in there, unconsciously buried, unconsciously screwing up our lives. When we thought we were separate beings, these thoughts were in agreement with that. So they didn't really give us any trouble. But now that our awakening is deepening, they're actually really starting to cause an issue. As the energy levels and the temperature of the spiritual ocean is increasing, anything that's not within that range is going to have to come to the surface and evaporate off. So I've been right where you are, and I know it feels awful, but you can pull yourself out of this. Not by effort, because there might not be a lot of energy to do that. Just by intention. I really want to see this is not true. I really want to see. And then just watch what happens from there. So I hope that helps. Thanks, Karen.
So the next question is from Gabriel. There is only one being, and that being can believe in something like unworthiness and see the reflection of that belief everywhere. At the same time, that being can be fully conscious of itself and see the reflection of the high state everywhere. So the one being is believing in unworthiness and is fully conscious of itself at the same time. Not sure how the oneness can relate to multiple bodies that have different belief systems or no belief system at all.
So I'm not totally clear on, could you just read that for me one more time, if you wouldn't mind, Karen? Thanks.
Sure. There is only one being, and that being can believe in something like unworthiness and see the reflection of that belief everywhere. At the same time, that being can be fully conscious of itself and see the reflection of that high state everywhere. So the one being is believing in unworthiness and is fully conscious of itself at the same time. Question. Not sure how the oneness can relate to the multiple bodies that have different belief systems or no belief system at all.
Thank you. That helps. So yeah, two experiences going on at the same time. So I can be completely identified with my mind and my body and be seeing the reflection of that everywhere. Unworthiness in the example that you've given. People treating me badly, behaving badly, not respecting me because I'm not respecting me. But at the same time, simultaneously, above thought, for want of a better word, is the pure awareness that never, the shapeless awareness that never took a form, even though the thoughts and everything are made out of it. It's also existing still in its essence, undifferentiated essence of awareness. So on that level, there's nothing that could ever be wrong, nothing that's happened. In the unmanifest self, there's only itself. And everything is perfect and complete and could never not be. And then when it appears as a human being, it can be really believing its thoughts about itself, that it's not good enough, and really experiencing that reflection all the time, everywhere. So you could say, in a way, that all beings are having, or the one being, or all beings are having two experiences at the same time. Even when somebody is sobbing, really in a lot of emotional pain, really in despair, there's still the awareness that is completely free and present and undifferentiated. And then, as far as the last bit of your question, the oneness, from the pure awareness itself, does it see different bodies? Does it see different states? Does it see belief systems and thoughts? Looking from awareness, as awareness, what do you see? Looking as the thing that is not a thing and is everywhere. You must see only yourself, awareness everywhere, disguised as these shapes. And some of those shapes, when you make a shape, awareness arises as a form, it's vibrating in the form, and some forms are vibrating very high. We might call that peace and love and joy. Some vibrations are much slower. We might call that hate or jealousy, greed, anger, sadness, all of those things and everything in between. But the awareness wouldn't put those labels on them. It wouldn't even really say vibration. It wouldn't even really say shape. It would just kind of, if it said anything, it would be I, awareness, I. So we've made all these shapes out of the shapelessness, and that's all the awareness really sees. So it's not trying to get to anywhere or anything, as we said initially. Right now, there's already that within you, which is complete, and out of which the thoughts and experience and the bodies and the emotions and the planets and everything is made out of. So just being clear on what it looks like. The self, capital S, sees itself everywhere. It does not see forms. The eyes look and see the shapes everyone else would call a form, or the inner forms of thoughts and emotions. But there's no willingness to label those and actually believe in their reality in the way that there is when we are identified with our mind and our egoic sense of self. So from the self, you see only the self. There's nothing to identify with. There's no bodies, there's no forms. It's all just you in various shapes. And that's a different perspective, isn't it? And it kind of eventually overrides all other perspectives. I could still use the labels, body, um, planet, speck of dust, amoeba, cat, dog, thought, emotion. I could still use those labels, but they have the same feeling inside as when I recognize who I really am. That feeling is just constant because the labels aren't being, it's not a feeling, but the labels aren't being believed then. So checking out, to answer the last bit of your question, what does awareness see? What does the infinite self see? Even when it looks through human body and senses, it's not seeing the same thing. It's seeing the shapes, but it doesn't have that compulsion to label and imagine that they're separate. Spending a little time with that question, what does the infinite self see, or what does awareness see? And you'll have that question answered inside then of how the oneness relates to all of this. And inherent in that question is the answer. It doesn't see all of this, it sees just oneness. It sees itself everywhere. Even to say, it doesn't even feel it's divided itself into shape and shapeless, form and formless. It doesn't feel that way at all. It doesn't have that capacity to distinguish and differentiate, even. It only sees itself. It would just say I. There'd just be one word in the vocabulary of all dictionaries. It would just be I, something like that. So I hope that helps. Thanks, Karen.
This is from Somerville. Dear Helen, is there a contemplation specifically for blame, victimhood, and guilt? Thank you ever so much.
So yep, if you look at victimhood, for me, something inside me for a very long time was enjoying being a victim, and it was hard for me to stomach admitting that, but I had to really look at that and okay, something when this thing arises and I've got the opportunity to transcend it and to stay as the infinite self, to rest as awareness, something really wants to do that and something doesn't at the same time. Something wants to keep on suffering. And for me, blaming myself, being the victim of a psychological attack or sometimes, emotional pain or things not going my way, things being done against what I want, all of that. When I really ask myself, why would I want to perpetuate that on some level? Of course, not consciously. It really came down to this self-hatred, unworthiness. That keep if I keep experiencing life as being the victim, then I keep having to struggle and overcome. And in that, I can prove my worthiness to some imaginary deity out there, some God figure. Um, so if I'm having a really hard life, which life does get very hard for a lot of us, I can somehow use that to prove that I'm worthy and ready to go back home to the self. that I'll be admitted when I get back in there. I won't be rejected, something like that. Look at how much I've overcome. Look at how much I'm still overcoming. Look how much I don't ever stop trying. Of course, this is deeply unconscious in the roots of the ego, which is terrified of the infinite self because it sees it more like a parental figure, a wrathful, vengeful deity. And nothing could be further from the truth, really, than that. So, if you look at why you would want to continue suffering on some level, of course, with no blame of yourself, we all do this until we don't. Then you can see, well, actually, that might not be true because I am not what I thought I was. I don't need to keep proving a worthiness to an imaginary God that is outside of me. When I am that I'm trying to appease and, suffering, I think I'm suffering for this. So blame for me, condemnation of myself, judgment, hatred of myself, all of that always came down to unworthiness, which is really just some root idea underneath that there's something wrong with me. I desperately want to go back home, believing that I have left home in the first place. But I'm terrified of going back home because I'm sure there's something wrong with me. And I know I'm going to be in trouble for leaving in the first place. I've probably said it before, but when I was a little child, I ran away from home. I'm sure a lot of us have done that. My parents were asking something totally reasonable of me, but of course, at the time, it was very unreasonable. And I left and I got to the end of the road with no money. And I realized I hadn't even packed any clothes. So I'm stood there wondering what to do. And about an hour had gone past and it wasn't, I was fearful of, I needed to go back. I was hungry. I was cold. I was quite frankly bored, but terrified of going back in case what my parents would say. Because I knew, this feeling of having left and really that they were right anyway. So we're doing this with the self on the egoic level where we're saying, I really want to go back home. It's where all the love and safety is that I want. And we really believe we actually walked out of that door and became a separate being. But when you see that never occurred, so self-inquiry, meditation, I am the thing I'm trying to reach, then all this blaming myself for all my imagined flaws, beating myself so that God doesn't have to do it for me. It just falls away, falls away. It's the original myth. You never left home. You are where you're trying to get to already. And that will all fall away then when you begin to see that. The purpose of answering the question, contemplation around this idea that you're not good enough. Can that actually be true? Is there something wrong with you? Actually, is that true? That anxiety when you meet someone new for the first time, you want to get close and have intimate relationships with people, but you can't let yourself because deep down you're worried that they're going to really find something out about you that isn't what you want it to be. They're going to discover that you're a fake or a fraud or whatever mind is telling you. And all been there, I've been there myself. It only really went away when I actually examined it. So what I was seeing in myself, inquiring and meditation, I am not that at all. And then when it came up again, is that true now, given what I've seen? Was it ever true? So I hope that helps. Lots of love. Thanks, Karen.
Okay, the next question is from Oz 485. Keeping the glass inside and letting the water flow inside out will keep it as clear as the universe. Such a brilliant way to see everything clear. Just questioning. I feel like the separation begins with the glass metaphor, even when we keep it inside the infinity. As we think there is a glass there, it is in a way being separated. Then we try to unite it, even through the glass itself. The glass is a form of fluid dynamics. With it, can we take some part of it apart from the universe? We can separate it from the infinite world. Is it what we need to do sometimes? When we do need separation, how do we unite? How can we know how to work with it? Or is there something to know or is it something to know who we are? How can we manifest non-duality? Is it like the mechanisms of thought and humanization of the mechanized thought? How can I ask who I am and what I am and question and non-duality? Is it the glass that makes me answer what I am? Is it the form or where we place it or how we place it? Or is it totally related to being able to taking the glass apart and then let them all unite?
Thank you. So, just to explain for anyone that didn't see the previous, we were talking about an exercise we do in the Dissolving the Ego course where we use a big glass bowl and we put some water in it to explain this cause and effect thinking that really runs our karmic pattern. So in the middle of this bowl of water, we put a glass in it, and the glass is symbolic of the body. So before the body arises, the human body, there's just one homogeneous whole water, which represents the infinite self, consciousness, what you really are. And then we put the glass in, it's like the body being born. There suddenly seems to be an inside and an outside of the glass. And that is so convincing. Inside is me. Inside the body is me, and the body and me. Outside is everything else and everyone else. So from one wholeness, indivisible self, suddenly there seems to be me and others. And that's a very convincing illusion. So to answer this question here, in the perfect analogy here, the glass will be made of ice, same H2O molecules. So whether it's liquid water or ice, same H2O. So the body is just a slowed down, the physical body is a slowed down condensation, a slowed down, like if we cool this room down that I'm sitting in, if we cooled it down enough, the water vapor that's in the air right now and invisible would begin to run down the glass of the windows, begin to condense from vapor into a liquid. And that's all that's happened with the human body. It's just slowed down energy so that it becomes tangible and perceptible to the senses. So in that way, there really is no inside and outside. The body is made of the same stuff of awareness, consciousness, presence, consciousness, awareness, looking like a human body is not an actual human body or looking like any form at all. So the contrast, though, the apparent existence of a human body gives us the capacity to perceive that having something that's in one place gives us, by contrast, the capacity to realize that which is everywhere all at once. Having something that's coming and going, like a thought or an emotion or a human body, by contrast, allows us to see that which is continuous and never ending. And if I'm understanding what you're asking correctly, if I'm understanding you correctly, the glass, the human body in the example, is not really an impediment to realization. It's actually something that's helpful. Again, recognizing that it's made of the same stuff as the awareness itself. The glass and the water are the same. The awareness and the body are the same. So how do we manifest non-duality? Well, just to realize that that is after the glass or the body arrives, nothing has changed. Still the same one being inside and outside everywhere. There's an apparent illusion of inside my body and out there, everyone else, everything else. But it's not actually so. So even while the body's still here, we can enjoy the body, but know that it's not a real thing in and of itself. Of course, we love it, we take care of it, but we don't actually believe in the end that anything changed. I'm still everywhere. I'm just also looking through this temporary form and experiencing what it's like to feel like I'm someone somewhere for a short while, against the background of my recognition of my everywhereness. So I hope that helps, but if I haven't quite got to the bottom of what you're asking, please do write back in and we'll have another go. Thanks, Karen.
So this question is from SK. It's been a little while since I last asked for your help. As I listen to your guided meditations and you say, place your attention on the spaciousness, It occurred to me, who are you talking to? It can't be the separate self because it doesn't exist. And it can't be my true self because it's the observer, the listener. It's not the doer. So how is that happening that my attention goes to the spaciousness? How does free will work? It seems like I'm managing the body's actions and thoughts. I know consciously I am not. How can I have direct experiences that I am not managing the body? Because it really, really seems like it. Will I always just be the observer in this human experience until enlightenment or the body dies? As always, thank you so much for your guidance, your teachings. Love you.
Love you too, and good to hear from you. So the thing that's helpful to understand here is awakening enlightenment is the realization that you're always just watching and that you're not doing. But however, there will always be a sense of a doer, a sense of managing the body. So right now, I know that these words are just coming out spontaneously, no clue what's going to be said, and quite often it's surprising what comes out. No clue what the body will do after I finish doing this. It's happening, unfolding by itself, and I'm just watching. But while there is a human body here and senses and thoughts, there's a sense of a doer, a sense of a someone sitting here talking and answering questions, all of that. So once we've seen that that's not actually true, we can actually begin to embrace the sense of a doer as being a helpful thing. The sense of a doer might even be a helpful thing once we realize it's not actually an entity. As you said, it doesn't exist. But it seems to, even now for me, it still seems to be here, a someoneness. But it's light and it's playful and it's even useful now that I can't believe in its reality. And even before I'm totally free of believing in its reality, I know it's not the only thing that's running the show. And then eventually it's clearer and clearer that I, the infinite self, am running the show. And I'm just using this sense of sense of a doer to orchestrate life. It's actually helpful. It's like basic operating software for the body, the sense of a doer, but not an actual thing. And so just recognizing if you know something isn't real, then if you really know that, you're not going to want to try to get rid of it. You're only going to want to try to get rid of it if you think it's real to some degree still. If it's just like a mirage on the road, water appearing on the road, not really, really can't drink it. You see it, you don't go and try and drink it because it's not real. You know that. You just let it be. Same with this sense of a doer. So recognizing that, as you said, there isn't a separate self to do anything, to manage life. And the infinite self can't manage life, nor would it want to. That the intelligence that's present in the infinite self is showing up as all of these forms, all of it. Life, the suchness of life, and showing up as an apparent doer of deeds, decider of decisions, and thinker of thoughts. Apparent, but not actual. And maybe it's using that sense of a doer to actually navigate through the worldly day-to-day experience. So rather than trying to get rid of that seems to be managing, can you perhaps sit a little further back? Do I even need to get rid of that? And could I get rid of that if I'm just watching? If I'm just watching as the awareness, the self, the consciousness, the presence, could I get rid of the doer, the manager anyway? And in that, deeply investigating that, I can't even get rid of that. I'm not even directing attention where to go. Attention, if you listen to a guided meditation and someone says, bring attention back to the silence. And when that happens, attention moves back to the silence, listening to the silence. You didn't make that happen. If we slow that right down, so you're sitting listening to a guided meditation I've done, and I say in that now bring attention back to the silence or stillness or consciousness, whatever you want to call that. There's an intention that arises and attention moves. But if you really zoom in right at that point, there's nothing that you do to make that happen even. Still just watching. Even the intention arising, I want to bring my attention back to silence. Even that you didn't make happen. It's all just arising in front of you. So you might need to kind of sit with this and look at this a little bit. And you'll see, oh my goodness, I've never, not even managed tension, the body, any of it. This sense of a chooser and someone who can decide where to put attention is only a sense. It does not need to be gotten rid of. In fact, it might even be useful because now I can seem to choose to bring attention back to the silence rather than letting it stay on thoughts. Maybe that's the highest purpose of this imaginary doer, to be able to choose, seemingly. But with the recognition and the concrete or ever growing, ever more certain concrete understanding that I'm not doing even that. That somehow this awakening thing is just happening in front of me, somehow, through the intelligence of my infinite self. Attention is coming to rest on its source, the silence, more and more often, the consciousness, the presence. And intention, desire for that to occur is just happening more and more by itself. And we don't know how it's completing itself, but it is. Just embracing that kind of seems to be of the doer, of the manager. And really, if you really see even once that you can't get rid of it, you're just watching. It's like asking the space in this room to move an object in the room. It's just not possible. Or to take something out of the room. It's not possible for you, is it? So have a sit with that and see what happens, and something quite profound might arise out of it. Thanks, Karen. All done? Wonderful. Thank you so much for your help there for reading. I deeply appreciate it. So I hope that you have enjoyed going through these questions with Karen and me. And just to finish up, as I said at the beginning, the next one will be the middle of November. And if you have anything you want to ask, as you've seen how we do it here, leave it as a comment under this video here on YouTube, and we will come to answer that and look at it. You can share your breakthroughs, your challenges. If you're really struggling, please reach out. You know, I'm here to help as much as I can. And the reason I can help is because I've been right where you are. Don't just look at this body mind as you see them now. I have been right where you are and come through it, so I know that you can. If you have something to celebrate too, I'd love to hear about that. So thank you so much. Namaste. Thank you.